When she set foot on that isolated island in Vanuatu, rumored to be the happiest country, especially among Korean women in their 20s, her adventure officially began. At 26, her name was Sun-hee Han. Since childhood, Sun-hee had dreamed of exploring places that barely appeared on any map. Not the usual European backpacking or American sightseeing tours, but remote, untouched spots, hardly encountered by travelers. After college and a few years in the corporate world, she always held onto a plan to one day take a long break to journey somewhere unknown. Then she stumbled upon Vanuatu online, an island nation in the South Pacific, part of Melanesia, with a reputation for extreme happiness rankings. The idea of a paradise-like country intrigued her. Were there any truly offbeat, unvisited islands? She spent every spare moment researching. Finally, she bought a plane ticket. Costly, but worth it, in secret. Her family and friends warned, "Isn't that too far? Is it really safe?" But Sun-hee, ever confident, answered, "It's fine. I'll be okay." Her journey took her from Incheon Airport to Brisbane, Australia, and then onward to Port Vila in Vanuatu. The warm, humid tropical air hit her as soon as she stepped off the plane, sweat forming on her skin, a heavy exotic atmosphere blowing in from the deep blue sea. She felt dizzy at first, overwhelmed, but excitement overtook her. Port Vila mixed tourist comforts, guest houses, restaurants, souvenir shops, with raw, traditional vibes. But Sun-hee's real goal lay elsewhere, a secluded island with little to no infrastructure. At a guest house in Port Vila, she asked local travelers and residents, "Is there somewhere few people go?" Most suggested Tana or Espiritu Santo, well-known islands. But she wanted unheard-of places. A local boat operator, after hesitation, said, "How about Mania Island? Almost no infrastructure. Boat trips are rare and rough." The moment he said rough and basic, her eyes lit up. Exactly what I'm looking for. A few days later, she boarded a small freighter-cum fishing boat at Port Vila Harbour. The journey was bumpy, with no comforts, just what she craved. Staring at the vast South Pacific sky, her heart raced. Crew members warned in broken English, "Mania Island is really quiet. If sea conditions turn bad, you could be stuck for weeks." Sun-hee nodded calmly. "That's what I want." After 2 days at sea, they reached the fringes of Mania Island. The captain looked concerned. "Weather's unstable. We might dock, but if a storm comes, we'll be stuck." Sun-hee, without hesitation, replied, "I'll get off here." And so her exploration of the remote island truly began. As Sun-hee stepped off the small boat onto the sandy shore, the vessel quickly turned back toward the sea. "Storm's coming. We might not be back for weeks. Stay safe," the captain called. Alone now, Sun-hee stood on the beach, facing the vast blue ocean and a dense grove of coconut palms. Finally made it, she thought. What now? She pitched a small tent near the shore, planning to sleep there for a few nights. But almost immediately, dark clouds rolled in and the wind picked up. "This is bad," she thought. "The tent might blow away." Panicked, she looked around. The inland forest offered some shelter, so she gathered her gear, water, dried food, a snorkel, fishing hooks, and minimal survival tools, and ventured toward the trees. At the edge of the forest, she spotted what looked like a faint trail, worn by time and footsteps. Could someone be living here? Curiosity took hold, and she carefully followed the path. It wasn't long before she saw it. Simple huts made from leaves and branches near a small stream. "There really are people here," she whispered in awe. Just then, a tall, muscular local man stepped out from behind a tree, clearly startled by her presence. Their eyes met. "Hello," she said cautiously in English. He hesitated, then replied, "Hello, trust." It was broken English, but Sun-hee smiled. "Yes. I came from Port Vila. My name is Sun-hee." He nodded, then pointed to himself. "I'm Kai." Through gestures, he invited her to follow him into the village. To her surprise, the village was made up entirely of men, roughly 15 of them, mostly in their 30s and 40s. They were either repairing huts or carrying tools, going about their daily lives. Where are the women and children? She wondered silently. Kai explained as best he could. This was a village called Laki, part of a more remote Vanuatu tribe. Years ago, a massive typhoon and earthquake forced most women and children to leave for safer islands or the capital. Only 15 men remained, surviving through fishing, hunting, and farming. Some occasionally sailed out in search of supplies or contact. Sunhee nodded in understanding. So, I'm the only woman here for now, she realized. It was an unsettling thought, yet the men didn't make her feel unsafe. They seemed more curious than anything, treating her with a cautious kindness. Kai vouched for her. She came off the boat, no choice but to stay, and gradually the others warmed up. Someone brought over a bamboo chair. Another offered her coconut juice. As days passed, a storm hit the island in full force. The sky turned black, winds screamed through the trees, and rain poured for hours. Escape was impossible. Sunhee realized she might be stuck here for weeks, maybe months, but instead of panicking, she embraced it. The men cleared out a section of a communal house for her, adding bamboo bedding and a thin wall of coconut leaves to offer her privacy. She slowly adapted to their way of life. In the mornings, she joined them at the shore to watch or help with fishing. She picked wild fruits and roots from the forest. Midday meals were shared at the village center, mostly grilled fish, yams, and coconut-based dishes. Simple, healthy, and satisfying. Despite the hardship, there was a beautiful sense of cooperation among the men. They really function like a small family, Sunhee thought. She began taking photos, capturing the scenery and their lifestyle. At first, the men were shy around the camera, but when she showed them the pictures, they became fascinated. Sunhee also shared knowledge she'd learned in Korea, like how to create a basic water filter using stones and charcoal, or how to collect rainwater more efficiently. She used tools from her backpack to help repair poles and patch up roofs. The men, impressed, said things like, "Wow, a woman who can fix things?" She laughed, "Let's all learn together." And they did. One man in particular began to stand out, Kai. In his early 30s, skilled with his hands and respected among the group, he showed a deep sense of responsibility. He started picking up English to communicate better with her, and Sunhee learned a few words of his language too. Their conversations grew more intimate, sharing personal stories of growing up, their dreams, and how they ended up here. Kai admitted he'd once left the island briefly, but came back to support his family, who eventually had to leave. Sunhee felt a wave of empathy. "Weren't you lonely?" she asked. Kai smiled gently. "It's okay. I have friends here. Someday I hope they can come back too." The more time Sunhee spent with Kai, the closer they became. Their shared efforts, walking the shoreline together, joking while picking bananas from trees, turned into moments filled with quiet excitement. It was nothing dramatic, but something was growing between them. By the time Sunhee had been on the island for a month, her feelings were undeniable. Though surrounded by 14 other men, only with Kai did she feel completely at ease, and her heart fluttered in his presence. Kai's eyes lingered longer, his expression softer when they spoke. One stormy evening, thunder rolled and lightning flashed across the sky. Winds lashed the village, shaking the palm leaf roofs. Inside the communal house, Sunhee looked out nervously. A section of the roof looked weak, dangerous in that wind. She insisted on helping reinforce it. Kai and a few others brought wooden planks and tried to nail them down, but it was difficult in the howling rain. Suddenly, Sunhee slipped. Her foot lost grip on the wet ground, and she fell, only for Kai to catch her just in time. Their eyes locked, her heart pounded. For a moment the world stopped. Rain soaked them, wind screamed, but they stood motionless, connected. "You okay?" Kai asked with a soft smile. Sun-hee swallowed. "Yeah, thank you." That one moment broke the wall between them. They returned to the shelter together, helping each other inside. That night, as the village quieted, Sun-hee dried off in her private space when someone gently approached. It was Kai. His voice was low. "Are you really okay?" Seeing her shivering in her damp clothes, he looked concerned. Maybe he thought to offer her a dry cloth or warmth. Sun-hee smiled shyly. "I'm all right, just drying slowly." They talked about what had happened earlier, and slowly the silence between them became filled with something deeper. Kai gently touched the back of her hand. Sun-hee didn't pull away. Instead, she interlaced her fingers with his. Emotions welled up. Then, without words, she hugged him. Surprised, he froze for a second, then wrapped his arms around her. In the background, the storm continued, but inside that small space, they shared warmth, a quiet intimacy that went beyond words. An island stranger and a local man connecting in the most unexpected of places. In the days that followed, their relationship deepened. Other men in the village noticed. Curious glances, some light-hearted teasing. "So, you two are a couple now?" But mostly, a supportive atmosphere. No one judged them. In this place with no formal marriage traditions, it was enough that they shared a bond and a living space. A middle-aged man in the village, a sort of elder figure, joked, "Well, now you two live together, that's as good as married here." Kai's section of the communal house became their shared home. It didn't have a lock or a real door, but no one intruded. An unspoken agreement had formed. This space belonged to Sun-hee and Kai. She found the simplicity and natural acknowledgement refreshing, so different from how things work back home in the States, she thought. No paperwork, no ceremony, just shared life. About a month later, Sun-hee noticed changes in her body. Her temperature fluctuated. Mornings were difficult. Nausea crept in. Food smells made her queasy. A tightness in her abdomen. At first, she thought she was reacting to island food or water, but then a more serious possibility crossed her mind. Could I be pregnant? With no access to pregnancy tests or clinics, she relied on instinct. Missed periods, persistent nausea, and her intuition all pointed to the same conclusion. She didn't know whether to feel scared or thrilled. She wandered into the forest to think, if I am, what now? Will I have the baby here? Eventually, she told Kai. He was silent for a long moment. Then he took her hands in his and whispered, "A baby. Our baby." He smiled, tears in his eyes. The news spread quickly. The men, surprised at first, burst into celebration. "A baby! A baby's coming to our village!" they cheered. For years, no child had been born here. Now, hope had arrived. As Sun-hee's belly began to round, the entire village supported her. They found herbs, gathered fruits, brought seafood and fresh coconut milk. They took turns fetching water, fixing meals, giving her space to rest. Though none had experience with childbirth, some had learned from the older women who once lived there. Kai stayed by her side constantly. When her back ached, he massaged her. When she couldn't sleep, he stayed up talking softly or brought her warm herbal teas. Sun-hee was overwhelmed, not just by the pregnancy, but by the kindness of the 15 men who treated her and her unborn child as the heart of their small world. As Sun-hee entered the later stages of pregnancy, the weather improved. One day, word spread that a boat had appeared near the coast, a cargo ship that made rare deliveries. It wasn't the same one she had originally arrived on, but it had the capacity to carry passengers. The men rushed to the beach to barter and exchange goods. Sun Hee watched from a distance. This might be my chance to leave, she thought. Her pregnancy was advanced. What if she needed medical care the island couldn't provide? But the thought of leaving Kai and this community that had become her family filled her with hesitation. They were preparing for her baby's arrival with such care and hope. Could she really walk away from that now? In the end, she stayed. The baby grew. Her belly swelled. Walking became more difficult. The men adapted. They took turns fetching water and preparing meals. When her limbs ached, someone always stepped in to help. Kai rarely left her side, caring for her with tenderness and calm. One evening, the village elder suggested a celebration, a simple ritual to bless the unborn child. It was an old custom on the island. Rhythmic drums, singing, dancing to summon good fortune. All 15 men gathered, beating makeshift drums, dancing barefoot in the firelight. Sun Hee, shy at first, was moved to tears. The attention, the love, it was overwhelming. Late one night, her labor began. It was a bit earlier than expected, but they were ready. In a cleared section of the communal house, a birthing area had been prepared. Sun Hee lay down, Kai at her side. A few men who had learned from older women took on the roles of midwives, doing their best to keep her calm and safe. The pain was intense. Hours passed. Sweat soaked her. She cried out from time to time. Kai held her hand, whispering, "You can do this. Our baby's almost here." Others brought warm cloths, herbal tea, clean water. Finally, just before dawn, a cry pierced the quiet air. A baby was born. Cheers erupted from the men. "It's our baby!" someone shouted. Sun Hee, exhausted and crying, whispered, "My baby! My baby!" As one of the men gently cleaned the newborn and placed the tiny bundle in her arms. Kai wept beside her, repeating, "Thank you, thank you." The village erupted with joy, the first newborn in years. Every man celebrated as if the child were his own. They took turns holding the baby awkwardly but tenderly. They made a makeshift crib from woven wood. They brought fish, fruits, and even carved tiny decorations to hang above where the baby would sleep. Sun Hee rested for days, healing. The men continued to care for her and the baby. Diaper changes were clumsy. Soothing the baby was hit or miss. But their devotion never faltered. Kai never left her side. At night, when the baby cried, they took turns rocking him. Sun Hee often wondered, how are all these men so involved? Back home in the US, parenting felt like something you did in isolation, often overwhelming. But here, everyone contributed. One man brought warm broth, another fetched water, yet another sang softly to the baby. They all agreed, this child is ours, all of ours. Once she regained her strength, Sun Hee took the baby for a walk on the beach. The waves were calm, the sky clear. Her child, only a few weeks old, blinked up at the world. She stood next to Kai, watching the ocean, and whispered, "Can I really raise a family here?" Kai smiled and said, "If you ever want to leave, I won't stop you. But if you stay, it would make me so happy. I love you." She couldn't stop the tears. The boat came and went a few times after that, but each time Sun Hee chose to stay. She was no longer a guest, she was family. The men made extra effort to gather supplies for the baby whenever they could. They worked on building sturdier homes, a storage hut, and even a basic rainwater collection system. And then, more change. As her child neared 18 months, another large boat arrived. This time, a government official from Vanuatu was on board. He came to assess the island's condition and understand the needs of those still living there. He was shocked to meet Sun Hee, a foreign woman living on a remote island raising a child. He asked, "Do you want to go back to the United States?" "You could. We can help." Sun Hee paused. Her mind flashed with images of her old life. Parents, friends, familiar foods, reliable healthcare. But her gaze turned to the village, to Kai, to the little boy toddling around barefoot. She looked the official in the eye. "Not yet," she said. The official didn't pressure her. He simply nodded, took notes, and promised to report back. The visit gave the village hope. Maybe someday the government would offer better support. Sun Hee too saw a faint light in the distance. Maybe this place really can grow into something more stable, a place where families return, a place where children can thrive. Time passed. Her son grew, 3 years old now. He was a little hero in the village, running barefoot across the sand, laughing with every man who picked him up. They all called him the Prince of the Island, and in many ways he was. Born of love, raised by a community of 15 men and 1 woman, his presence gave the island life. Sun Hee sometimes thought, if we were in the US, he'd be in daycare now. But instead, here he was, cared for by everyone, learning directly from nature and people around him. By then, the community had built sturdier wooden homes. They reinforced shelters for typhoon season. They even began to shape a basic seawall and a place where supply boats could dock safely. Of course, with just a handful of people, rebuilding wasn't easy, but the spirit was strong. Sun Hee's presence had transformed the island. Her love with Kai, the birth of their son, and the unity of the village gave everyone a shared sense of purpose. Their island wasn't just surviving, it was recovering. One golden afternoon, Sun Hee sat on the beach watching the sunset. Her son played nearby, collecting shells. Kai sat beside her, smiling softly as he kept watch over their boy. Sun Hee's heart swelled. "This is my family," she thought. "This is my life now." Sure, there were moments she missed home, rice and kimchi, fast internet, electricity on demand. She missed her parents, her friends, but here she had peace, human warmth, real connection. Her son grew up under blue skies, barefoot in the sand, surrounded by love. That, she realized, was everything. She leaned toward Kai and whispered, "One day, when our boy is older, I'd like to visit the US with him. Maybe you could come too." Kai chuckled. "I'd love to see your home, but for now, we have work to do here. Let's go when the time is right." And Sun Hee agreed. By then, she was in her late 20s. Her early 20s dream of remote travel had become something she could never have imagined: love, motherhood, and community in a faraway place. Her son spoke a mix of English, the island language, and a few Korean words. Sun Hee, too, had adopted a unique dialect. Then, her body began to feel different. Her chest ached. Morning nausea crept in again. A strange sense of déjà vu. Could it be? She didn't need a test this time. She knew she was pregnant again. She told Kai carefully. His eyes widened, then lit up. "Another baby?" he whispered. The village cheered when they heard. 15 men, once living quietly in solitude, were now preparing again, just as they had a few years ago, making baby items, carving decorations, fixing up the house. And Sun Hee knew. This wasn't just a temporary place. This island, this life, was her home. Maybe she would return to the US someday, but right now, this was where she belonged. With Kai, with their son, with their unborn child, with the people who had become her extended family. A few months later, another supply boat arrived, this time with a government nurse aboard. Word of the growing population had reached officials. They were planning to help, starting with a small clinic and education support. The village rejoiced. The nurse assisted Sun Hee through labor, and the presence of a trained medical professional gave everyone comfort. After hours of labor, she gave birth to a second child, a healthy baby boy. This time, everything felt smoother, safer. Kai was there holding her hand. The men outside celebrated wildly again. Their small island now had 2 children. Life went on. The baby nursed, grew, laughed. The older brother watched over him proudly. The 15 men, once hunters and fishers, now became babysitters, builders, and caregivers. The island rang with life. Sun Hee, lying back one evening as her sons played in the sand, and Kai watched with his familiar gentle smile, reflected on everything. The typhoon that had stranded her, the eyes of 15 strangers, the bond that had grown, the love that had bloomed. What had started as a wild adventure had become her life. Not a perfect one, not always easy, but peaceful, full, real. As the sun dipped below the horizon and golden light bathed the beach, Sun Hee watched her family, Kai sitting with their older son, the baby gurgling in her arms, and thought, this is home. It had started with a map, a flight, a boat, and a storm. What she found was not just survival, but a life shaped by love, community, and unexpected purpose. Over time, the men continued improving the village. They stored emergency food supplies, reinforced buildings, and even began teaching the older child basic numbers and words from different languages. A few men had picked up more English from Sun Hee and from interactions with the government official. Slowly, they were building something stronger, not just physically, but socially. Occasional boats brought more supplies, some contact with the outside world. Government officials promised they would look into setting up a more permanent clinic and an educational outpost. They also asked if any of the women and children who had once left the island might consider returning now that it was safer. Sun Hee took part in those discussions. She wanted more families to join them, not just for her sons to have playmates, but because the island deserved to be alive again. We can improve this place step by step, she said to Kai. If we show people that life here is possible again, maybe the others will come back. Kai nodded. If that happens, our children won't grow up alone. They'll have friends, and we'll have a real village again. Until then, the laughter of 2 small boys echoed through the palm trees. Somewhere in the future, Sun Hee might take her family to the US, show them cities, restaurants, trains, and paved roads. But for now, the ocean was her backyard, the stars her ceiling, and the hands of 15 men her community's support. How did a young American woman in her 20s end up starting a family on a remote island in the South Pacific with a local man and no electricity or running water? Anyone would ask. But when you live it, you realize love doesn't care about borders, languages, or expectations. Love finds its place, and Sun Hee had found hers. As she stood at the shore, her second son sleeping peacefully in her arms and her older boy playing in the surf with Kai, she whispered softly, "I'm so glad I came here. I'm so lucky I met you both. Let's keep building this life together." The wind blew gently. The waves answered with soft rhythm. Their story wasn't over. The island, once silent, now pulsed with the sound of laughter, footsteps, and children's cries. The waves would come and go, but now they had each other. And that was enough.